Yeah.
All right, we are live on Facebook. Father, if you want to share.
Yeah, I'm going to share it now.
And I will start recording. So welcome everyone. I'll start with the announcements. My name is Noelle and I will be helping to moderate today's Armed with Faith program with Father Gary Kyriacou and our guest, Perry Skaggs. We love hearing from you around the world, so please use the sidebar chat to share where you're joining from, or if you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can write where you're joining from in the comments and say hello. We love hearing from you. We ask that you invite others to join MyOCN community and join yourself if you haven't already. Membership to MyOCN community at myocn.net is always free, and you'll be the first to receive updates, new opportunities for members to communicate and participate. We are a welcoming community, available any day, anytime, and anywhere. And as I said, membership is always free. A few reminders to be respectful and polite with the opinions of others as we have our discussion today, but please do ask questions or make comments, whether you're here with us on Zoom or you're joining us on Facebook. We welcome your questions and we'll have plenty of time for Q&A during the program. We're talking tonight about youth engagement, as always, on our Armed with Faith program, and we'll be talking about engaging with campers during and after camp. Father Gary will talk about that a little more in a second, but this program is live on Facebook and it's being recorded. So if you miss anything or you want to share the program afterward, you can always share it from myocn.net. We'll have it up there by the end of tonight or tomorrow morning, available to share. The Orthodox Christian Network is a 501c3 corporation and a 100% donor supported ministry. So we thank all of you that support us financially for your donations. And we also appreciate all of you who support us through sharing, engaging with our content, and all of you who are here watching live with us today. So I will turn things over to Father Gary for our program.
Thank you, Noelle. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everyone for being here. We'll start with a quick little prayer. Let us pray to the Lord. Lord, have mercy. Lord our God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather. We thank you for our youth workers throughout our archdiocese and our world who work and strive to make you a permanent fixture in the lives of our youth. For you are holy now and forever into the ages of ages. Amen. So I'm going to do something different today, if you don't mind, Noelle, but I'm going to start and see if there are any questions right off the bat. Any of our viewers that are on here with us on on Zoom, or anybody on Facebook, post any questions yet? Because there were a lot as we left last week with Perry. So start there, and if there's not, I'll continue the conversation with Perry as we did last week. Oh, you're muted, Noelle.
If anyone wants to ask a question now, you can use the raise hand feature or unmute yourself, and you can also post in the chat at any time if you have a question or comment, or in the Facebook comments.
Okay, but with that, I'll go ahead and encourage everyone to ask questions once more. But Perry, here we are again. Just to remind some of our viewers who may not have been with us last week, you are the director of St. Sophia Camp. You're actually wearing the t-shirt today. I don't recall you wearing the t-shirt last week, but I see that, 2018. You're also a high school athletic director and a coach at Duarte High School. So that's what frees up your summers to be able to do St. Sophia Camp. We were talking last week quite a bit about selecting counselors and what it's like working with Generation Z and some millennials and stuff like that. But Perry, what I really want to focus on this week as moving forward is relationships with campers outside of camp during the off season and how that works for you. Do any of the campers, out here in California, I'm in Ventura County, you're in LA County. We're not as condensed as they are on the East Coast in New York. So kids that go to church together might also go to the same schools together. They might live in the same neighborhoods, right? So those kids see each other all the time. Out here, we're not used to seeing each other, but maybe at a Greek festival or summer camp, or maybe a Goya basketball or some sort of youth event that happens. So for you, Perry, how do you try to keep in touch, or what's it like keeping in touch with campers, counselors, staff members during the off season?
Well, I'll start with staff. For our staff, and you heard me say it last time, you'll hear me refer to, the family aspect that we talk about at St. Sophia Camp. So the staff really becomes like an extended family, and it kind of works all the way through during the year. So for staff, we do sometimes just, mindless stuff. I'll have extra tickets to an SC football game and call a couple staff members, and we'll get together. Or we'll, take a Benihana trip, and we try to stay connected through social events. I remember doing, impromptu staff meetings at the St. Catherine Festival that happened every year in July, which was right before our camping season. And so a lot of the staff knew, you needed to show up on Sunday afternoon because, we'd always get together and socialize and have lunch and then, talk about issues and whatnot. But for the off season, it's becoming increasingly important to plan things to do in the off camp season, so to speak. It used to be in the past that everything was sort of cyclical. If you started with camp as being the summer program, then when the fall hit, everybody kind of rushed back to school, and then FDF starts. And the FDF just kind of, for the Southern California or, the Western Diocese, that just sort of eats up everything from then until, FDF hits in February. And then for out here, Goya basketball starts in February in earnest. And then, you hit festival season that sprinkles through the spring and all the way through the fall. So there are all these different things that bring the youth together. There are some parishes that are starting to do some specific things. Just for example, the Assumption Church in Long Beach out here before pre-pandemic, they would have like a volleyball night. And it was just like open volleyball, and you'd come down and you play volleyball. They, had this brand new gym for the last few years, same thing at St. Sophia. And they really were utilizing it a whole lot, just creating activities at the church, at the parish, that would bring the youth in. So, that's kind of the way that I was going before the pandemic hit, was trying to utilize St. Sophia. St. Sophia is a brand new building, brand new gym, classrooms, everything. They have a brand new hall there. And so we were, starting to do some things. We'd get together and bring kids in to play basketball. There was a Monday night standing basketball night at St. Sophia that would, bring young adults in. So I think we need to re-engage in that as we're able to, as churches are more comfortable. So for example, this coming Sunday, the 7th, the gentleman that is our, what we call our health and wellness director at St. Sophia Camp, Mr. Dan Kyriacou. Dan is, sort of the head of St. Sophia Goya basketball. So he wanted to just get some things going, and far before February, right? So he's organized what he's called a skills and drills and dinner night on Sunday. So from 3 to 5 on Sunday, he's going to bring whoever wants to come in, and he's going to have various stations and work drills and work basketball, in preparation for the basketball season. And then just, from 5 to 7, it's just hang out and have dinner. So, those are the kind of things when he was asking me, hey, what do you think of this? I said, let's do it. Well, what if nobody comes? It doesn't matter. Exactly. We got 5 kids. We'll work 5 kids, and we'll have 5 kids and their parents for dinner from 5 to 7, and we'll hang out and we'll talk about, some other things that we might want to do. And I know I mentioned last Tuesday that we're trying to plan what we call a St. Sophia Camp Saturday. So we'll run some program on a Saturday at St. Sophia, utilizing their facilities and doing arts and crafts and doing games and Orthodox life and all that stuff. So, plan a dance one Saturday night. Fridays in Southern California, you can't do anything because you try to get everybody coming in on a Friday. That's too long of a trek, too much time on the freeway. Even if you're coming, 10 miles, it could take you 2 hours. So, do that on a Saturday night. Do a dance. There's lots of things. I know we started doing a winter camp to kind of bridge the camping seasons, and we did one just before the pandemic, and it was fantastic. We had like 25 or 30 kids at a different facility, and it was a different vibe, different schedule. We did a lot of playing in the snow, and we actually were there on New Year's Eve. So we all had this big New Year's Eve dance at winter camp. So I think it's really about picking back up the momentum, at least for us, but for anybody. And like you said, I think it's really cool on the East Coast. My oldest daughter now lives in Philadelphia, and you're right, the community is much denser. Everybody's all packed up, on top of each other. And you're right. Kids who go to the same church go to the same school. But you're right, that's not the same here. You really have to be purposeful in what you're trying to do as far as planning goes to bring them in. And then don't worry about, how many are we going to get? You did a bike ride in the fall, right? You did this whole
in the spring, right?
The spring, that's right. And it was outdoors, and you were like, I don't know, what if 5 people come? I was like, oh, the heck with it. I mean, you had me, work a station, and the camp worked the station, and you had, I think, 40 people.
Yeah, it was a great turnout. Yeah, it was a really good turnout.
And that's the kind of thing that has to just keep happening. You just gotta plan these things. And like you and I have been talking about for quite a while now, people are starved for things to do. And why not give them things to do that have to do with our ministry, with Orthodoxy, and with the church?
Awesome, Perry. I love the term you just used, purposeful planning. And I know that there's a lot that goes into ministry and youth ministry that is purposeful and planned. There's a lot of things that are impromptu as well that come off. But what are some of the purposeful things that we're doing at St. Sophia Camp to keep kids connected? Like, what is it that it has to be done in the program, keep kids connected, and make sure that the program works well? What's purposeful planning at St. Sophia Camp?
If you're talking about the actual camping program that we do
during the summer, right?
Well, just about all of it is purposeful. There's very little that's left to chance. What we do leave to chance is what we call organic. We want to leave the opportunity for something to happen organically. And for camp, that's happened a lot. We've had things planned, but something earlier in the week, or even if we're in a first week and a second week, something organically started to roll, and we have to be able to roll with it. So there might be some sort of theme. Kids are dressing a certain way. They're talking about something, and you want to be able to clue in on that and be able to sort of run with it. So you can't just say, oh, this is what the kids are all talking about, or this is what seems to be, topical. And then, oh no, we didn't plan for that, so we need to just go with what we've planned. You got to recognize what's happening organically in the moment and kind of run with that as well. But all of what we do is, like you said, it's purposeful planning. If you're at St. Sophia Camp, it oftentimes feel like, oh man, they've just decided to do this an hour ago. And that's on purpose as well. So it gives a sense of, we just decided to do this, let's go. But, that's been on the schedule since, June or May. Things may tweak and change, but we like to also give the kids the sense that, we're spontaneous as well. And we are spontaneous, but sometimes it's a creative spontaneity.
Purposeful
spontaneity, where they think it's just happening and you just put it together and, they get all excited. And I've done that a lot too. Like, hey, we just decided to do karaoke night tonight. Oh my God, that's great. But we had that on the schedule, and that's what we were doing. So, and then sometimes we just don't even tell them what's happening. What's happening tonight? Oh, I can't tell you until dinner. Just to build some anticipation. And, sometimes we find with the kids too, is they so want to know exactly what's happening because they feel that they have to super prepare. That's one of the things I've found in the last few years. Like, oh my God, I've got to know exactly what's happening after dinner, because then I don't know. Do I take a shower before? Do I take a shower after? What's going on? I got to be prepared. And sometimes we just like to let them go, relax. Whatever it is. Don't worry about it. Just relax and have a good time. So
there was one year, Perry, you guys did all the holidays, American holidays during the week.
Yes, we did. It was holiday week at St. Sophia Camp.
Having had, and we have a question from Maria. I see that, Maria. We'll be right there. But having just, had the holiday of Halloween and thinking about that summer and how you did things, do kids think about what happened at camp during the off? Do you remember what happened at camp during holiday week and then recreate it during the off season? Are you seeing things like that, or did kids bring up their own family traditions for the different things that were happening?
Yeah, occasionally. That week was every day's a holiday at St.
Okay. How did that work?
And we went through, I think we started with Halloween to, I think maybe it was 4th of July. We did Halloween, we did Christmas, we did New Year's. I think we sort of ended with New Year's. I think we had a Valentine's Day. So we just kind of took the calendar year and went with it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I know Thursday, Friday morning was Christmas morning and Friday night was New Year's Eve, from what I remember. And every day was themed around that, and activities were themed around it. It was the most ambitious thing we ever did. And I got to give credit where credit is due. That was my oldest daughter came up with that idea, and I thought she was nuts. And the rest of the staff really jumped on it, and they were able to flesh it out to the point where I was like, okay, that works. I mean, you talk about planning. There are lots of great ideas that come up in what we call our pitch meetings. We get together as a staff and everybody pitches. They got ideas. They have to come. It's like if you're sitting in an advertising firm or something, and you're pitching whatever the thing is. That's what they do. And there are some crazy things that get pitched that on the face of it, you'd be like, you can't do that at church camp. But we always come from the angle of, well, how do we change it? How do we switch it? How do we adapt it? Right? And then there are pitches that happen year after year after year. And I say no after no after no. And then one year it's like, yep, okay, we're going to do that this year, either because it gets fleshed out better. I feel more comfortable with it. So if that gives you sort of an answer to that about.
Yeah, I love the pitch ideas. I love giving young adults the ownership of the program and allowing your staff and your young adults to go through with all that. Let's go and take up Maria's question right now. Maria, how are you?
Before you get your, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I might have to go because I'm babysitting. So I just want to get my pitch in, especially if you're looking for pitches. Excuse me, Father Gary, do you know me? I'm a Hellenic College graduate, 82.
Yeah.
I live in the Holy Land.
Yeah.
Okay. My book, Christina Goes to the Holy Land. I like to offer you a pitch to have a leadership conference. That's why I joined you today. Maybe in 2024, 2023, summer 2022, winter break. I don't know, but I think young people that are leaders for camps, if you're looking for a place to have dinner, I like you to have dinner in the most ancient place in the world, in Palestine, the only Christian village that exists, and to include Taiba on pilgrimage. We've been encouraging the Real Break, the Orthodox Christian Fellowship before Corona, to have trips, and they were using Taiba Golden Hotel and Taiba as a base. But then, the last 2 years, it's been a bit frozen with Corona. So beyond this Corona world, I like to introduce for you this idea for leadership training and pilgrimage to include Taiba for young people that work at camp as, an experience of a lifetime, as a life transforming experience. You're talking about every day is a holiday for a theme. Every day in the Holy Land is a day we say Christ is risen. So it would be just the most.
Maria, I can't tell you how perfectly timed your pitch is. Noel, will you give Maria my email address in a private chat? Maria, let's take this conversation offline because, as you know, I'm also the director of Ionian Village. And one of the things that I'd like to do for Ionian Village is add a trip to the Holy Land on there as well. Since the kids are that part of the world, we might as well come over. I was in the Holy Land just before COVID, actually just before Perry's winter camp. I had to get back in time for that. But just before COVID, we were in the Holy Land, and it was a life-changing experience for me. And I'd love to share that with the youth of our archdiocese. So, Noel, share that with her, and we'll go ahead and discuss that, Maria, offline. And it's a brilliant idea. Thank you. Thank you.
This is so important to us. I'm glad if you know that we exist a half hour outside of Jerusalem. Thank you if you keep our location in mind. God's
absolutely
you in every way with every
absolutely
for the glory of Christ. Thank you.
Yeah. Keep us in your prayers as well, and we'll do the same. Absolutely. Thank you, Maria.
Forgive me, a sinner.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other questions on there, Noel?
Not so far.
Okay, cool. So Perry, we talked a lot last week about the Saint Sophia Camp family and like doing things, as a family. You just talked about purposeful planning, seeing some of the staff during festival week, and pitching out different things. I'm going to ask you a question that I ask during Orthodox life a lot of times with the kids, but I think that you'll grasp the direction I'm going. What's the point? What's the point in it all? What's the point in you spending your summer? You work long hours as an athletic director during the year, right? And then you hang it up in early June, and then from there you put on the hat a little bit more firmly for Saint Sophia Camp. You don't really ever take that hat off, but you put it on a little bit more firmly come the summer months. What's the point in doing it? What's the point in being part of it? Why make the effort?
It's a good question. We really get, it's a year-round type of thing. I deal with things year-round, especially if we're going to run something in the wintertime. But yeah, we start getting going in the spring, recruiting counselors and staff in April. May, we open up registration. I kind of do two things at once. I take about maybe 3 weeks off during the year, somewhere in June, to maybe take a vacation with the family. But even then, we're working and planning with Saint Sophia Camp. Why do it? Because on a personal level, there's nothing better. It's the best 2 weeks of my 52 weeks of the year. Hands down, at 55, it's still what I look forward to the most during the entire year. And there are plenty other things that are exciting during the year, but for me personally, nothing beats the 2 weeks I spend at camp. And over the years, it's become more of a job. When I was a little bit younger, it was really a huge social event with some work thrown in with it, because it was my peer group, running the whole thing. And so it had a different vibe to it. The older I get, obviously, the more it becomes a job. But for me, it gives me at 55 the ability to stay connected to the younger generation. Keeps me young, for lack of a better term. I still know what the kids are listening to. I still know the terms. I still know, whether I'm woke or not, whether I'm, turning ancient or I have something going on, as far as the kids go. So on a personal level, that's why I do it. And I know that my time is coming to an end. There's the years ahead are far shorter than the years past. But I would be absolutely sad the day that I either choose to or have to not be able to spend my 2 weeks at Saint Sophia Camp. The other reason is because it's important. It's insanely important because, and we talked a little bit about this last week, for us, we stress the interpersonal communication aspect, being with people, talking with people, interacting with people live in front of you, in your face, right? Together, physically, which during COVID posed its challenges. But that's what our emphasis has evolved over the last 5 to 10 years. One, because kids spend so much time online or virtually. They spend so much time texting. And they're losing, in my estimation, the ability to engage in interpersonal communication, to be able to have empathy towards others, to reach out and be of comfort to others, to pick up on nonverbal cues that people will be throwing out there, trying to, have somebody understand or recognize what they're going through without, saying it. So that's why I think it's important for us, and it's important to do it within the context of orthodoxy, not just, there are plenty of other summer camps that exist that probably try to do the same thing, but aren't organized in a religious aspect, right?
So that was going to be my next question. Why Saint Sophia Camp instead of Aqua Waters Camp here in Camarillo? Why?
Yeah, because Aqua Waters Camp's focus is completely different. It's just on aqua waters and fun, and making sure kids are safe, obviously. But we're trying to not only connect with them in a physical way, being fun and whatnot, but we're trying to reach them at a spiritual level as well. Because I think kids today, again, we're here for an hour, so I'll tell you my opinion. I think kids today have real difficulty in a moral sense. I think morality has become a super gray area for them because there's not a lot of emphasis paid on that's the right thing to do in general in society. I'm not saying that that's not what Orthodoxy talks about. That is what we talk about. And that's the difference. If you go to, sleepaway camp that's, run by whoever, some outdoor mountaineering group that doesn't have any kind of religious affiliation, that's not a point of emphasis. But for us, it is. We have to be able to create for these kids what I think is important is a sense of right and wrong and morality. And I'm not talking about sin and what's not sin and what you're doing that's against what the church teaches. That's not really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that they have a sense of what is right and wrong for people, what is positive and what is negative, and how they can lend that to other people and make a positive impact on other people. And one of the ways they do that is first by being confident within themselves and feeling good in their own skin. Because let's face it, kids are bombarded with so many things that just make them feel like crap about themselves. Yeah. They can't take a picture without filtering it so it looks perfect. They can't, post something on their story without it being perfect so people will like it. So acceptance for these kids is so ingrained with social media that we try to kind of, let that go. It's not important, how many people like you, right? But what's more important is you like yourself. Right. And then from that, you can garner, other things. It's not important that somebody hits 100 likes on the things you did if you don't like what you put out there to begin with, if you don't like what you put out there in the world. So we want kids to feel confident. We want them to feel positive about themselves. And we do that in the context of family and orthodoxy and faith and truth and all those things so that they'll come back and get more of it, right?
Love it. I love it. Let me ask you then something. One of the things that you and I have spoken about as we tag team Saint Sophia Camp and I'm there to do my thing as the priest is in youth ministry. I've heard you say it and that I say it a lot all the time is that when a parent leaves their child with us, it's our job to return the child in a better condition than we found them, right? Like they're going to give their child to us for a week. We're going to return the child with tools that are going to enhance their life when they go down the hill. That's something that we talk about a lot, right? What are some of the things that if I told you I had a 9-year-old kid that, for the last year and a half has been stuck at home because of COVID and this or that, and I really want to force them to come to Saint Sophia Camp, what are some of the things that they're going to experience in that transformation during that week? What are some of the things that they'll get to partake of, and what kinds of changes do you usually see in a kid who comes for the first time?
Sure. And I don't want to put like a guarantee since your
kids
be transformed. It's not the intent. Oftentimes it happens, and sometimes it happens incrementally. But if you send your kid to camp for the first time, I think one of the things that they're going to get experiential wise is they're going to have a whole lot of fun things to do, and they're going to have a whole lot of people to do it with. And they're going to learn. I always tell parents, especially young kids, they're going to learn to be a little independent. So don't be surprised when your kid comes home and is a little bit more independent than when they left. Like they might take out the trash when they get home, because at camp, they'll have a duty where they may need to take out the trash. They need to clean up their stuff every day, right? We have, inspection. And we go through and we inspect the cabins, and that's sort of a fun, over the top type of thing. But it is something that they learn. They're learning to organize their stuff, put it away. They're learning how to budget their time, right? They've got X amount of time for this and X amount of time for that. So, you know, we might start with a 7-year-old and they'll get a little bit of it. But you'll be surprised, the kid that comes to camp that's somewhere 12 to 14 for the first time, will go home with a little bit more of that. And parents will give you feedback on that. Like, my kid came home and they, like, you know, picked up the dishes, you know, after dinner and put them in the dishwasher, or, you know, clean the table, because at camp they're responsible for cleaning the table and putting the dishes over and throwing things in the trash. So sometimes it's just as simple as, you know, household duties and chores. And sometimes it's as complex as changing their outlook. They left and they came and they were sad, they were disengaged, they were upset, they didn't feel good about themselves. But, you know, for a week they got something different. They were pulled out of that environment and they were put into something which I think is super positive. And sometimes they're challenged and pushed out of their comfort zone and realize that they can do things that they, you know, didn't think they could do before. So all of these are byproducts of camp. And not just, you know, not just church camp. There are lots of camps. I just think that as we, with our organizing principle being orthodoxy, do it better. And there's more depth, I think, in what we do. And there's more connection to a group, which in large part is the Orthodox community that we're all part of. But another byproduct of St. Sophia Camp is the people that come in that aren't necessarily connected to Orthodoxy. They may be Greek, but they may not be connected to Orthodoxy. And surprisingly, from parents, it's like, oh, they came back from camp and they wanted to get involved in FDF. They never talked about that before. Or they wanted to go to Sunday school, or they wanted to get involved in basketball or the Orthodox Festival or whatever it may be, right? Because they had a positive experience with their faith. And then sometimes there are kids that aren't Greek. It could be a completely different denomination. Sometimes they come in with no faith whatsoever, and you have the opportunity to reach out and minister a little bit, and at least expose them to something that you think is super positive and can make a great impact on their lives.
So have you ever experienced somebody coming to camp who's not Greek and encounters the faith and jumps on board, basically, that says, this is what I want to be, this is how I want to worship?
Sure. The two like big examples, my goddaughter came to camp when she was 8 with her Greek friend in 1980, whatever. And she came back every year. And she came back every year. And then she came back for 4 weeks. She was like a 4-weeker like you. And it was still at the old camp, and I had hired her as the girls director, I believe. And she was probably in her 20s. And, you know, she would go to chapel regularly. She would even go to confession. I remember that, you know, priests wouldn't hear it as a sacrament, but she would participate in confession. Mm-hmm. So she would participate in all the aspects of camp without partaking of Holy Communion, right? So, but she'd go to chapel, she'd go to Orthodox life, she learned the hymns, she would sing them. And in her 20s, she decided to take Orthodoxy as her faith. And so at camp, Father Bacchus came up and we baptized her at camp and had a ceremony, and I was her godfather. I remember looking for her. She decided to do it like at camp, right? When camp started, like, I want to do it this year. And you had to call Father and say, hey, you know, can you come and we let you do this? And I remember shopping for a cross in San Bernardino. The options weren't that great, but I found a nice baptismal cross that she could wear. And so that's just a clear-cut example of someone who came and was part of our program and then chose when she was an adult to embrace Orthodoxy as her faith. So when you ask her, you know, what religion are you? She said, I'm Greek Orthodox. And it wasn't a few years ago that we had another girl that came to camp that was, you know, peripherally was Greek, but had never been baptized, right? But had come to camp over a series of years, and she made the conscious choice. And I think she was probably about 14 or so at the time. and wanted to be baptized. And her family came up. You did the service. We carved out time in our program that was part of what we did, and we had a baptism. And for some kids that came to camp, that was the first time they were able to see that sacrament kind of up close. And you did it in a way where everybody was engaged. You know, sometimes if you're sitting, at least around St. Sophia, that baptismal font is way up there, and you don't necessarily are privy to all the things that the priest's doing or sharing or as part of the ceremony. And I thought it was a fabulous activity. I'll just put it in our activity realm, that the kids were able, you did it sort of in a circle. Everybody was close. You explained what was going on. This is what's happening now. These are the prayers that I'm reading. This is why we're walking, you know, across here. This is what we're doing with the water. And so I think kids, for a lot of them, for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, that's what the sacrament of baptism is. And having no idea. Oh, I just figured just dunked us in the water, right? So it was a fabulous teaching tool as well.
So I love the term that we're using, and that it kind of spawned on us during this time right now, but byproducts of camp. And after last week's show, my son and I, the one that you mentioned, you know, continue to keep him nameless for now, but
Sure.
people know who they are, went and we had a burger and we continued that conversation about camp and being authentic at camp versus being authentic at home. And we talked about how, you know, he said, I want to find a career where I can be that person. And I said, well, life is not summer camp, right? Life is not about, you know, you're not going to be able to live at summer camp. And so what advice would you give to a young person who like comes up to the camp and like is really able to just strip off the world and be themselves and like let their guard down and be loved? And then when they come back home though, they have to put that guard up and they have to be protected again. What advice would you give them about being authentic and developing relationships where there's a lot of trust in the program that you provide and with the people that you have around you, right? Where they might not feel that trust at home. What kind of advice would you give as a coach, as a teacher, and as the camp director for young people to make that byproduct of the program more real in their home, on their daily life?
Well, the advice I tell them is just take what you do here and do a little bit of it at home. You know, the things that you like about yourself at camp, or the things that you like that happen at camp, try to recreate that in some small measure, in some small way. So, you know, I remember telling a kid, you know, had difficulty, like, I don't have a lot of friends, but I come to camp and, I know everybody and everybody knows me. And I was like, yeah, because I told him, because you're a fun guy. You're fun. People like to talk to you. You are easygoing. You give great advice. You're just, easy to be with, and people like that. They gravitate towards that. But it's not like that at home. I don't have a lot of friends. I said, well, are you the same way at home as you are at camp? Well, no. Well, there you go. There's number one. If you want the same reaction, you've got to be the same person. And even though it may be difficult and those people don't necessarily see you that way, that doesn't mean that's not who you are. So just try to provide as many opportunities for yourself to be what we call your authentic self, who you really are, or at least what you're most comfortable being, whatever that may be. And for kids nowadays, and certainly over the last decade, the comfort of who they are, and here's some of the difficulty I find, the comfort of who they are and what they're comfortable being sometimes butts up against the church itself, and sometimes butts up against, some of the teachings of the church, or at least what the kids think, and so that's a really interesting dynamic which to navigate, how to maintain, hey, this is what the church thinks and teaches, and more and more kids I'm finding don't necessarily buy into all of that, right? So how do you highlight the things that you think are important for them about Orthodoxy and about the church, so they don't reject it outright? And so it, like we talked about last week, so that seed stays planted, it stays in there. It may be subconscious, they may not really realize it, but how do you keep it there so that as they get older and they go through more experiences, they can then start to see how valuable faith can be and how valuable that faith-based community that we create, that we have, can be in their lives.
Well, one of the things I love that you say that, because it's structured, right? And that's one of the directions that the conversation went with him that night. Was I said, what are some of the things that happen at camp that you don't have at home? And he said, my time is more structured. Somebody else structures my time. I know I have to wake up. I know that I'm responsible for waking up. I know that I have to go to chapel. I know that I have to go to breakfast, that if I don't go to breakfast, I'm not going to get anything to eat until X time. So it's all structured, right? And so we talk about structuring their day in that same way, and doing that, letting that be the byproduct of the camp. How, when a kid says that he feels so comfortable letting their hair down, right? And at school, they're not able to do so because they're not as trusting. How do you just let that go? And like you said, you need to just try to be that person when, the homecoming queen at school is not as nice as the homecoming queen at the summer camp, right?
Yes. It's much more difficult to take or to come down off the hill, like we talk about, and get back into sort of everyday life, because everyday life is not as beautiful and loving and warm and special as camp, as St. Sophia camp, right? And that's one of the reasons why the kids come every year, because they get that feeling. Like I look at it a little bit as they come, they get juiced up, it's like the Green Lantern getting his, filling up the ring, right? And then they take that power back. I think the more that they come, the more that we reinforce these things. As I watch these kids get older, the more, like you say, tools that they have, or the more time that they've spent being who they are, they're much more comfortable taking that back into the real world, because they've had practice at it. They failed at it, which we've talked about too, is very powerful. They have to be able to fail and not get it exactly right. And the challenges for those kids is that it doesn't happen like as fast as we would like it to, right? They're still going to go through these challenges, but at least they know there's a place where they can come back to sort of get recharged, or to learn some more things, or to learn some more things about themselves, or learn more things about others, or their faith. There've been some powerful activities that we've done, namely that you've done over the last few years, that border on this catharsis a lot of times. And I noticed that some kids come for that to, it's not like confession, but they come in a safe space and can sort of unburden themselves with some of the things that they're dealing with, because they don't feel like there's anybody down the hill in their regular life that they can talk to, or that is not going to judge them, or that is not going to get upset by the way they're feeling, or just, talking about these things. And so when they're able to come there and do that at camp, because some kids come and they come specifically for some activities that we do, because they know they're going to get a chance to be part of that, and be part of that as in a sort of a loving and supportive group, right? But they grow from it, because invariably it may be difficult or tough, but sometimes when they admit some things that are going on and they get support from their St. Sophia camp family and their friends and their people that are there, and the clergy and the church itself, they're able to go back to their everyday life down the hill, better prepared for some of the things that they face on a daily basis that is not, in the perfect, world of St. Sophia camp. So, again, you try to figure out what they need in a grand sense, right? Service their needs. We talk about what do they need? What should they get out of this program? And then when we really get good at it, we're micro targeting exactly what a particular kid needs, right? what we've identified either quickly as they come or over the years. The great thing about our St. Sophia Camp family is we can see these kids year after year after year, and you know that a kid may come and that's not the same kid that was here last year, right? There's something going on, and we don't ignore it. We try to address it, and if we can, we'll help. But sometimes, the kid doesn't want any part of it, right? And then you see the kid, the exact same thing. You see that kid, and that kid's kind of a pain. That kid really is. And then he comes the next summer, and oh my God, that kid's been transformed for whatever. It may have been nothing we've done, but we get to be the beneficiary of it and to see that growth and
of the trend of the growth, right? Let me ask you though, Perry, what are the things that you see that kids need these days? I mean, you're on the front lines at school with the kids all the time, your high school kids, right? And then you're jumping into really in-depth kind of living when you have them at summer camp. What is it that kids really need these days? Like you've grabbed me by the collar before and you've pulled me close, and whether it was a seminarian, whether it was a brand new priest, or whether I was a priest for 20 years, which is this year, right? You've been able all these years to be able to grab me and say, hey, you need to wake up a little bit and look, the fire's over there, the smoke's coming from there, but the fire's over there, go in that direction, right? What are some of the needs that our kids have? What are the fires that we need to put out? What's some advice that you can give to parents, to youth workers, to clergy about where should we be opening our eyes? Where are we missing it? This could be a whole other show too right now.
And to be able to engage in people in sort of a give and take is actually probably that's the form in which needs to be done. You touched on it earlier, they need structure. Kids crave structure. They crave the boundaries. They want to know where they can go up to. They want to know where the limit is. They want expectations. And I think a lot of times, as parents in general, we don't do that. When they come to camp, they get it, right? Because I take my job seriously in that I'm your parent for the week in a sense, or 2 weeks, however long you're there. I will give you structure. I will give you, all those things. You will be held accountable for what you do and who you do and how you behave, right? And over the years, kids understand that, and they understand that dynamic that, I sort of represent the head of the family, and Sarah, who's been our girls direct for years, kind of operates within that mom role. And then you've got your older brothers and sisters and maybe your aunts or uncles,
right,
and stuff like that. But there's an expectation of behavior. There's an expectation of how you're going to treat other people. So they know what to expect at St. Sophia Camp. And I think some of the greatest fears, they don't know what to expect in the real world, because sometimes there are no clear boundaries. It's not easy to see and navigate exactly, what they can and cannot do, or what's, we talked about earlier, good or bad for them, positive or negative. So that's one thing I think that we can do as parents, and certainly as a school, as a teacher, that I do coming back. I'm a lot, from 10 years ago, I'm a lot less, as a PE teacher, like, oh, let's get your mile done. Come on, let's do push-ups. Because it really isn't about that. Although in my realm is physical education, that's what I teach. But I've shifted more towards, instead of physical health, mental health.
Okay.
And that's, I think, another thing that moving forward, especially for young parents, your kid has food on the table, has a place to live, has a shelter and whatnot, all those Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But what I think parents today, and younger parents too, need to start focusing on is the mental health of their kids, because they're being attacked in so many different ways that you may think you're doing a good job of it, but they're getting bombarded with all these mixed signals and messages and social media and judgments and what needs to be this and how you need to be that, social pressure, peer pressure, that's not necessarily positive, that affects their overall mental health, their self-esteem, the way they feel about themselves. So for the time that I have left as a director of St. Sophia Camp, that's going to be another priority that we're going to delve into, that we want to take care of the mental health of our kids, not only their physical health, not only their spiritual health, but their mental health as well. And it's a whole brand new sort of avenue or aspect, at least as a camp director, that I'm starting to recognize is an important part of the process, and being able to create activities, situations, even just openness around that to be able to service that need. And I talked a little bit about last week about one of the priorities for us at St. Sophia Camp is to go out and get a little bit more training and exposure for our staff on mental health issues, recognizing and what you can do in order to help combat some of those things that you see. Now, I'm not a mental health professional, but in my work as, in youth ministry, that's going to be one of the things that are going to come up. And we've got to be able to try to service the mental health of our kids in our youth ministries.
So with that, kind of tie in next week with our conversation now, and that I was in New York City this last weekend for Archons weekend, and it was jam-packed with all the metropolitans from our country. The patriarch was there, our archbishop was there. There were youth directors from all over the country there, and I ran into next week's guest, Panos Koufos, who's the youth director for the metropolis of Boston, who is a product of Boston, the Metropolis of Boston Camp, MBC they call it now.
You mean St. Sophia Camp East?
St. Sophia Camp East. And he told me a story that was really interesting, and it's along the lines of what you're saying. And he said, Father, I got into youth ministry because of a really small interaction I had with Father Ted Barbas. And this is the story. He's leaving chapel one morning during camp, and he just leans over to his buddy and he goes, that was a good reading for the day because it hasn't been the easiest year for me. It's been a kind of a difficult year. This is his junior or senior year in high school as a camper, right? Father Ted Barbas hears that, makes a mental note of it, and then just before Vespers begins, calls Panos over and says, hey, heard you say this. If you ever need to go for a walk or you ever need to, talk, let me know and we'll do it. And that relationship gets formed, right? This kid Panos told me that his life took a dramatic turn for the better after that interaction, right? Those are the things that sometimes we as clergy or we as youth workers can overlook because we just might say, just another kid who's stressed about the SATs or another kid who's stressed about AP classes. How do you teach that, Perry? I don't know if you can, but how do you encourage that with the counselors, with your staff that works with you to investigate, to see, to be curious about the children's lives? Like what are some of the tools that you use to get them to be, courageous to do something like that? Father Ted is a master. We know that, right? He's a Jedi in all of this. So he's going to get it. But what are some techniques that you as a football coach, as a teacher, as camp director, as somebody who trains other youth ministers, tools to pick up on so that they can recognize the needs that our kids have?
Two or a couple important things that I tell my staff that are important to do. Look and listen. See and identify what's going on. And it's okay to form an opinion. Oh, I think that kid may be wrong. But there's nothing wrong with, looking, evaluating, seeing if there might be a need to fill. And then listen to what the kids are saying, listen to what they're not saying, listen to what their body language tells you in certain things. And don't be afraid, I tell them all the time, to just reach out. Just, a random conversation with nothing. I can't tell you how many times like we've come away from chapel or an activity, we're transitioning to something else, and I'm walking and some kid sitting next to me and I just engage, right? About anything. Hey man, what'd you do at crafts today? And the kid will talk about that. Or, hey, what do you do when, you play baseball in the off season? Or you just ask questions, probe. And the kids will tell you, they'll talk to you. And if they don't, they're telling you stuff anyhow. So look, evaluate, listen to what they're saying, listen to what they're not saying, listen for their nonverbal cues. And then don't be afraid to engage. Don't be afraid like, oh, I don't want to say something that, he's going to take the wrong way, or say something that, he's going to, he or she's going to take and misconstrued. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to fail. If you're doing something out of the goodness of your heart and you're trying to make an impact positively on somebody else, then whatever missteps you make along the way, it'd be totally fine. It's like the Good Samaritan law for if you're going along the way, and you may not be first aid and CPR trained, but the Good Samaritan law protects you. You can jump in and try to render some aid to someone, and you're not going to be sued because you weren't technically trained as in first aid and CPR, and you're not technically trained as a youth minister or in the clergy. It really doesn't matter, or as a social worker. You're just a friend. You're just a friend lending a hand. You're an older person as a mentor, lending a hand, just listening, whatever it may be. And I think those are a lot of times a lot more powerful than some sort of clinical session or clinical setting. So to speak.
I fully agree with you, and as you were saying that, it reminded me of the activity that we do at the camp called Walk the Line. And
Sure.
one of the standard questions that we always ask, and for those that don't know, Walk the Line is a question is asked, and the kids walk to the line if they answer it in a positive way, or they don't walk to the line, and it creates conversation. One of the questions we ask is, do you feel like you have somebody you can confide in at home? And it's always interesting to discuss that afterwards with kids who didn't answer in the positive, that they feel like they're alone, that they don't have somebody. And that is a huge opening for a counselor, a staff member to jump in and to remind that kid that you're part of the family, you're part of all this as well. So I can't think of an experience where somebody is going to fall on their face if they don't engage a youth. I think that any attempt at it is going to be at least a double, ground rule double. It could be a home run, but never be a strikeout, right?
I'll tell you also something that's super important that I just wanted to throw out there. If you're involved in camp ministry, guys like me are a dime a dozen. Lay person who happens to be in education, probably runs program. There's thousands of us that are around like that. We are all over. What's in short supply are clergy that can relate to kids in a way that kids respond to. And it's tough. It's tough doing your job because as a priest, you are sort of looked at a lot of ways in one particular manner, right? The most effective times at camp has been when we've had clergy members who have been able to come and break down what I call that fourth wall and engage with kids so that kids see that a priest is a human being too, just like they are. They have a different job, they have a different calling, they have a different vocation, but they root for the Dodgers too when the Dodgers are playing. And they get upset at some things and they laugh out loud at funny stuff. And they have all these things going on in their life that you do. And they're not some sort of mystical creature that stands in front of the church and sings the hymns and gives you communion and someone, honestly, that you need to somehow be afraid of.
Right.
Because in a lot of ways, that can be very intimidating for kids. And so clergy members who can do that make a powerful impact on the programs that they're involved with. And it's a talent. It's something that they have as part of, what they do as a priest. And I can tell you that the more these clergy do it, they may start and it may be an uncomfortable kind of place and they quite don't know how to do it. But the more they do it, the better they get at it. And when those kids can foster a relationship with somebody in the clergy, it's powerful stuff, man. It is super powerful because it's just somebody else that they relate to, that's tangible, that they can touch, that they know is real, that's not some sort of figure out in front of them. And so for anybody that's, running youth ministry or camping programs, you got to try to find those clergy members that can do that. Or if you can't find a clergy member, find some seminarian that's coming in that can do that too, because that really makes a powerful impact. And the best summers that we've had at St. Sophia Camp have been the ones that have been the things that we do are done in conjunction with, somebody like yourself and the clergy who has that kind of experience and can do that in your camping program, because then you got the yin and the yang, and you got both things operating. And that's when your camping program and your camping ministry is the best.
You complement it very, very, very well. I love that. Noel, I just looked and the hour's gone already. We're a minute past, and I love this conversation. Are there any questions that we missed or anything like that? I think that we covered a lot of the things that people asked me to cover between last week and this week, but any questions anybody post or?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I'll give people one last minute to raise their hand or unmute if they'd like to.
Okay.
You know what happens, Father, is that they all watch this on Facebook afterwards. They're recorded. Then they're like, oh, man, I wish I could ask that.
That may have happened because I got a lot of questions, a lot of texts during the week, people saying, I wish you would have asked this, or I wish you would have asked that. And I'm hoping that I got there with you and had those conversations. The interesting part about all this, Perry, is that we think that, a lot of times people think that summer camp is kumbaya, pizza, and a pool party, right? And there's so much more under the surface of it all. And that's where I think that you did a really good job of introducing us to St. Sophia Camp and how that happens. And there are other programs throughout the country. We realized, there's Detroit, Chicago, Atlanta has all their camps. Even here in California, there's 2 other camps that operate in the metropolis. But the camps that the kids are successful at is they give them the opportunity to be authentic, and they give them the opportunity to grow in their own way. And I think that that's what you do very, very well. And what I wanted to share with our audience is how vital camping programs are to the development of our youth, not only just because of their faith, but because of their social development as well. And I really want to thank you, and I appreciate your time in doing that with us. So thanks.
No problem. If you get stuck and somebody cancels on you, I'm an easy guest to put on. So
good. So 4 o'clock on Tuesdays is good for you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. At least when I know ahead of time and clear my schedule.
And you have lots of love from all the old seminarians that go back that now have been priests for years. The Orthodox brothers, Father Ted Barbas, all of those guys who made their entry into youth ministry through St. Sophia Camp, send their love and their respect, and they're thrilled that you're still doing it. So thank you. Noel, I'll let you do any kind of business, and then we'll close off with a prayer.
All right, so our Let's Talk Live program for this week is canceled. We're having an OCN board meeting, so no Thursday program this week, but we do have Living Icon tomorrow with Father John Vlahos. At 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And as always, we have The Real Deal with Father Michael Marcantoni on Facebook Live after that at 8 p.m. And then we have adult education. Adult education with Michael Haldes on Sundays, 11:30 to 12:30. That is on our YouTube channel. And you can also find all those recorded videos on our YouTube channel as well. And then next week, of course, we'll be back with Armed with Faith. And we have Panos Koufos, who serves the Greek Orthodox metropolis of Boston as the Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministry. So we'll be talking with him and, of course, with Father Gary next Tuesday.
Thank you, Noel. And Perry, anything you want to leave us with? Any closing
words?
I'm
circling next Tuesday. I definitely want to be in on that one. I guarantee you I'll listen to that, and I'll take some nugget that I'll use for the summer as well. Thanks for the opportunity. You know how much I love talking about, summer camp and youth ministries, and I get really jazzed and excited about it. So thanks for the opportunity to share some of the stuff that I figured out over the years. And if anybody ever needs something for the camp that they're running, or they want to come watch and see what we do at St. Sophia Camp, just, let me know. We're more than happy to have you.
It's awesome, Perry. I appreciate you offering that. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you again, Perry. Really appreciate it. Maria, send me that email. Father Sotiri, I see you there, buddy. I appreciate you being here week after week. You're getting, your miles are adding up for being here. I appreciate it. And Mariella was one that asked a lot of questions about how we can help with youth ministry up at her parish. And we'll be helping her out as well, Perry. She asked questions about camp and about program stuff at her parish where she's at. So this program is really kind of helping get word out and put people together and network in different ways. So I appreciate you saying that. In the
Good.
name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. O heavenly King, comforter, the Spirit of truth, who are present everywhere and fill all things, the treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and abide within us, cleanse us of every stain, and save our souls, O gracious Lord. Amen. Have a great night. Have a great week, everyone. And